Welcome to Chrysalis Chats. My name is Tanya, and I help people just like you transform their diets and lifestyles to be plant-based. I'm excited to be here with you today. I'm actually at one of my favorite nature preserves, but unfortunately when I got here, because it took me 2 hours on public transportation, it was closed, so I can't even get into the nature center area. But nonetheless, I'm excited to be here with you today, and we're going to be talking about how to respond to restaurants and going out to eat with friends who are not necessarily vegan. So by the end of this video, you're going to have my top 4 suggestions for dealing with this scenario. So the first thing you can do is make sure that your friend who you're going out with understands what vegan is. A lot of times people think vegan means vegetarian. Oh, so you don't eat meat. Well, no, actually I don't eat meat and I don't eat anything from an animal. So that's an important thing to differentiate. And then they'll be like, oh, you mean like you don't eat eggs, you don't eat, fat of an animal? And you're like, yeah, I don't eat anything from an animal. And that's important to just kind of clarify, not only with your friend before you go out to eat, but also once you're at the restaurant. So if you're at a restaurant and your waiter doesn't necessarily know what vegan is, and you're like, oh, is it vegan? And they could be like, oh yeah, it's vegetarian. In their head, they're thinking that's what they mean. But you don't mean that, you mean vegan. So for all you know, it could be cooked in butter, it could be cooked in animal fat, whatever the case may be. So another way of putting it would be just to have a little bit of a conversation with the waiter if you're at a restaurant like that, and if it's not already specified on the menu, which you might want to look out for non-vegan restaurants in general if that's something that you're really concerned about. But if you do find yourself in that situation, just go ahead and make sure that you're having a conversation like, yes, nothing from an animal, no meat, no milk, no cheese, no animal fat, none of that. Could you please clarify for me whether or not this dish is free of all that stuff? And just say it with a heartfelt tone, say it with a sense of sincerity. That's my suggestion for you in that situation. Another thing that you could do in that situation is ask to see the ingredients. You could just simply say, hey, could I please see your ingredient listing for this item, or could you please tell me what all is in here? I really, have a lot of dietary sensitivities, and I would just like to be sure I'm not eating anything I don't want to eat. That's another way around that. That's another way that you can just, explicitly ask to see all of it. And a lot of times restaurants will actually have the ingredients kind of labeled or written out on a menu for you in the back, like they have an ingredients menu kind of thing. So you can check it out that way. Another thing you can do is just ask what they're cooking in. If it should be an all vegan meal and you've already asked, oh, is there any butter in that? Is there any whatever in that? Just double check and then ask what they're cooking in, because sometimes as a vegan you also want to avoid different kinds of oils, just not necessarily because they're not vegan, just because maybe you're looking out for your health a little more, and say you don't want corn oil, you don't want something cooked in that. That's totally fine. So just something to consider, like asking if they what they fry in, and then if that's not something that floats your boat, maybe you abstain and switch up what you're eating or what you're planning on getting, or maybe you just avoid those restaurants. That's number 4 in general entirely, as much as you can. And again, I understand for people, depending on where you live, you're not going to have an infinite amount of options necessarily, and I just want to be empathetic to that and to your situation. However, you can just avoid those restaurants and choose to ask your friend if they want to come over and cook a meal together, and maybe pitch in 50-50 on that meal in terms of the expense or whatever. Or just make sure that you're making it a point to go to vegan specific areas or vegetarian vegan friendly restaurants that kind of advertise themselves as such, because that's a good indicator that they're going to be more aware and more understanding about your dietary needs. Okay, so those are my 4 tips. Again, you just want to, reviewing all of those, you just want to make sure people know what you're talking about when you actually say vegan, because believe it or not, that's still a thing that we have a lot of people still understanding, which is totally fair because it hasn't been so mainstream where it's just in everybody's consciousness at all times like that yet. Okay, and then just make sure you ask to see the ingredients if it's a little weird and you feel like maybe your waiter doesn't really understand what you're getting at still after that heartfelt intention that you're bringing to that conversation about what is a vegan meal. And then ask what they're cooking in if you want to avoid any animal fats on accident, or if you're looking out for your oils that you don't want to ingest, such as corn oil, or maybe you're really trying to avoid canola oil, things of that sort. And they may be able to offer you a point on that. They may be able to offer you a different kind of oil. And again, like, just ask everything that you are asking about. It might feel like you're asking a lot of questions, and for some people that can be kind of uncomfortable. And for me, if I feel like my waiter is like a little uncomfortable with me asking the questions, I'll just be like, I'm sorry I'm asking so many questions. It's just that this is like a really important thing for me, and I just want to say, I really appreciate your patience and willingness to work with me through this while we figure out what's good. And then you can kind of go forward with your questions, and they kind of know, oh, this person's not trying to be difficult, or this person's not trying to give me a hard time. Because like, waiters deal with a lot, you know what I mean? So like, they deal with some different personalities, and they might not be in the most loving environment. Just something to consider, that you might want to look into yourself and how you're acting in that situation, just to be sure that they feel good about you asking so many questions. Okay. And then last but not least, you can just avoid the non-vegan specific restaurants in general, if at all possible. And that's just a really good way to clear through so much of the clutter, right? So that's kind of my top 4 tips for you all. Thank you so much for commenting, for subscribing, for liking, for all the love, for sharing with your friends. I really do appreciate it. Please let me know if this video was helpful. I know what it's like being vegan and going out to eat, and it can be weird, it can be disorienting, especially if you're not at a place that's super vegan friendly. So with that said, friends, whether you are just a little caterpillar starting off like, where are the leaves at, or you're a full-fledged butterfly sipping the nectar of a plant-based diet, you, my friend, are beautiful. Thank you so much, and have a blessed day.